front of me, and one sort of broke from the group. He just inched his way into the wreckage. He knows who's underneath the wreckage. He knows.
I stayed with one firefighter who I'm very close with, Tommy Burke, and we proceeded to look for the command post. Tommy came across a knee pad, so we started to dig and dig. Tommy reached down and said, I grabbed a leg. This person was underneath like a big I-beam, so we went from 4 or 5 people to probably 50 people, and everybody's trying to help. And it wound up being our chief of department, Peter Gansey. We put him in a body bag. We gave a moment of silence. We gave a hand salute. And then we just proceeded to continue digging.
When guys from 43, when they finally came, they were exhausted. They'd been trying to get into us for hours. I used the rope, tied it to myself, and stretched the rope down, tying it off at spots so other guys could follow. We went one at a time. I found a few other chiefs. I told them that there's guys in there, there's still guys trapped. And after I was sure that there was help on the way, guys threw me in an ambulance and took me off to St. Vincent's.
I met this EMS guy. He'd driven over in the morning, Michael, and he had big medical packs and oxygen packs on his back. He was amazing, and he said, come with me.
Allison and I, we became a team. Better than standing around doing nothing. You know, we had the determination. We could see that in each other's eyes. We needed to do something.
So we just filled our backpacks with things, and we just said, we're going in.
We grabbed extra water and everything. We brought it outside, and we started handing it out to people. We started washing people off. We would wash somebody off. We go put out a fire. We go hump hose. We go take pictures. We go wash more people off.
Looked up the West Side Highway, and you just saw transit buses of firefighters coming in. They had their help there. We didn't want to get in their way. That's when we just kind of backed off. We took some more photos, and then we left.
We made our way to Firehouse 10, and we started a little triage there that night, Tuesday night. I didn't keep thinking about the big picture. I just kept thinking about, let's get through this. Let's get these guys. There's like about 50 guys in a line, and we had all these saline bags washing their eyes. But then the line never stopped. They just kept coming and coming.
Me and about 3 or 4 firefighters that I work with worked our way into the Vista Hotel to try to see if there's any firefighters in there. Upon entering there, we found a search rope. It ended in a void. A void is just a collapsed area. Going into the voids as rapidly as we can, calling for body bags and putting people in these bags. And I can't really describe it. You almost wish that you weren't down there doing that. But you had to do it because it was our job, and people needed to know they were getting respect and they were getting buried at home.
I don't consider myself a New Yorker or an American at all. I was born in South America, and I lived for a very long time in Europe. But by being in New York that day, you were touched by what happened in a very different way from anybody else who was anywhere else in the world. I decided to go to Tribeca to see if I could help. At about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I arrived to Ground Zero. When I arrived there, I couldn't really believe my eyes. It looked much worse than it did on TV.
We were stopping for maybe every hour or so, maybe until 2 or 3 in the morning, getting our eyes washed out. People were walking around in the collapsed area, handing out water to us. It was unbelievable the amount of volunteers and help we had there.
I tried to see what I could do to help all these people who were actually working there. I started taking bottles of water to different parts of the site where the firefighters were working. People wouldn't really talk very much. And in some moments, whenever they thought they would have found somebody under the rubble, there would be total silence for a few minutes because they were trying to hear something from under the rubble. That silence is something I remember more than the noise there.
About 3 o'clock in the morning, my company all met and we all discussed what we were going to do, where we were going to sleep, and try to get a couple hours sleep. One firefighter and I, Tommy Burke, proceeded on this boat, which was damaged from the collapse. We took long showers to clean out our eyes and took like about an hour nap and then went back to work.
I was there until about midnight, and by that time, I believe it was about to start raining. They were changing the shifts of the firefighters and rescue workers. And at that time, I decided to leave after a long day.
When I woke up that next morning with my mom and just watching the sun come up, it was just this sinking feeling, just this hopeless sinking feeling in your stomach.
I had called up my office to tell them that we hadn't heard from my father yet, and they said, you know, if there's anything we can do, let us know, you know, we'll do whatever we can. I said, actually, if you could scan in my father's photograph, we want to look for him.
Her art department set up this whole flyer in less than an hour, and we had it copied and we were off.
I remember the next morning trying to go to work. By now I knew, 71 people who were attending our conference had died, and 16 of my workmates had died, and I had survived. I was the only one who was there that morning who got out.
We walked and we walked and we walked, hanging our flyers, going to hospitals, going anywhere and everywhere that we thought would be beneficial to find him. We stayed in the city till about 2, 3 in the morning, came home, slept for about an hour, and went back into the city again.
We found a little restaurant which was half a block away from the remaining facade of the South Tower. Set up the IV bottles, set up stations for irrigating the people, set up food areas, set up a psychological counseling area.
The firemen, they just lost all of their friends, and we all sat down in candlelight and they started singing Danny Boy and patriotic songs, and everyone was just crying. They just raised their drinks and toasted for all those who were left behind.
I just know we were so taxed with the area we were working in. We were finding people, we were finding fire trucks, police cars, ambulances. We were looking for anybody. We were looking for a big void. Everybody was hoping to just find that big void and just let the people out.
I remember on the third day, I think it was, we could hear tapping underground. At first they thought it was the generator pumps, but it wasn't, because they were doing SOS codes and they could hear people tapping back. They worked on that spot for like 4 or 5 hours, but they couldn't get to anyone. It was 50, 100 feet of concrete.
We just kept searching and searching. We were trying to remember what we searched the day before. But it was so big that I didn't really leave the West Side Highway for days.
After the 5th day, after a routine was set, we were asked to close down. We walked around to where we started, and Allison and I then said goodbye.
I rollerblade up the West Side Highway, and there were thousands of people just cheering and yelling, and everyone was just trying to help. Everyone, even if you couldn't do anything, these people were waiting there for days and days. They knew they couldn't get in, they couldn't do anything, but they held up these big signs and they just said, "Thank you, heroes," and they were just cheering and yelling, and then I just left, and I just went home.
Sunday afternoon, Mark's company set up a crisis center in Midtown. They provided us with diagrams of the World Trade Center, the floors where they believed the impact of the planes hit. And at that point, I think my children and I knew that there was no hope.
I felt lost. I felt lost. I spent a lot of time trying to reconnect to the things that were really important to me, and it helped me calm myself and helped me put pieces back together.
We had the first missing flyers. If it helped bring some hope to other families, and I'm glad it was able to help.
I think the posters stayed on the wall so long because it became a memorial, and I think people didn't want to take those pictures down. They didn't want to forget.
I was angry. I was sad. I went through a roller coaster of emotions, and all at a very intense level. I was happy. I was happy to be alive.
I guess one of the hardest things for me was, after a while, it became clear that all the families had come and gone, and in some cases there were still desks filled with people's personal belongings. But someday those desks are going to be filled again, and then we just carry on, you know. It's over, you know.
Just before Christmas, a neighbor who was also a police officer stopped by the house to let me know that they made a positive identification. I had to have a funeral director go into the city to pick up the remains, and I asked him to be honest with me and tell me exactly what it was that they did find, and it was simply a bone. So it pretty much confirmed what we had suspected, that Mark was killed instantly, and that I guess we were one of the lucky ones to at least have some form of closure. There are days that I don't think I'll be able to get through the day, but then there are times when I just hold on to the memories and the joy he brought into our lives.
The September 11 Photo Project is a collection of more than 5,000 photographs and writings in response to the terrorist attacks. After opening in a New York gallery, the project began a national tour, and a selection of the photographs was published in a book.